Good afternoon, everyone. This is Uma Shankar from Team Voice of VIP. I welcome all of you to the webinar in our webinar series, Voice of VIP Webinar Express. So, in this session, we are going to talk about cooking as a visually impaired. So, we have a lot of doubts, we have a lot of inhibitions and our own problems when it comes to cooking. So, we always fear that we may cut ourselves, we may burn ourselves, or whatever. Inhibitions that we have. So in this session, we are going to, not entirely, but at least we are going to start that dialogue of cooking as a visually impaired. We are going to give you some tips, some tricks, and making your kitchens accessible. So for this session, we have our comrade Payal Kapoor here. So she's been working as a hotelier for the last 28 years, and now she's working as a life savior in a CPR based firm. So she's been giving a lot of workshops and a lot of other motivational talks about home managing our homes, managing our kitchens, and managing our lives entirely. So I'm sure this session is going to be a great ride for all of us. I am excited. I hope all of you are also as excited, if not more than. So I am giving the mic, at least the virtual mic, to Payal Kapoor. So Payal, over to you.
Thanks so much, Uma. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. It is a wonderful opportunity to interact with a whole set of new people. I've been talking to people from various groups, but there is always a special place in my heart, as always, to be interacting with people from my own city. I've been a Hyderabadi all my life, and the Telangana state and everything else that goes with it has been my home for almost 50 years. So it's always, I'm so happy to be here with all of you. I have another request from my end. Please don't send any text messages also. If you have anything to say or whatever it is, please hold on until I finish speaking, because what happens is, our screen readers are going to be reading this. So it's distracting in the ear to hear the screen reader read a message. So may I please request everybody not to send any messages until after my presentation is over. Thank you so much for understanding. Okay, so here goes. Now, we are all people who are capable individuals in every sphere of our lives. Vision impairment has never really been, the problems that are there with vision impairment are there. We cannot deny that. But we have seen ourselves do so well in almost every sphere of our lives, whether it is education, whether it is, the jobs that we take, whether it is helping other people or anything else that we do. But what happens in that is people seem to still question our capabilities in certain areas. Like mobility, outdoor mobility is one of them. And, one of the biggest challenges that we face on a day-to-day basis is our families believing the fact that we can be independent in our own spaces, in our own homes, and more importantly, in our kitchens. The reason the kitchens are is a little difficult. The kitchen is a little difficult space primarily because you're dealing with a lot of hazardous equipment. You're dealing with fire from your gas stoves. You're dealing with electricity from your various electrical appliances. You're dealing with sharp implements, that is the tools that you use, your knives and peelers and everything else. So the chances of cuts and burns and bruises and various other things is very high. So if our families feel that we are not capable of doing this without their assistance or their constant vigilance, they might not be wrong to begin with, because all of us need to start somewhere. I was a hesitant cook myself. I mean, it took me many years, considering I was a sighted person until I was 22 years old. And that's when I lost my eyesight. So I had learned how to cook, and I had learned how to do various things in the days at my hotel management college. But what happened when I lost my eyesight? Everything was new. Now my visual backup had gone. So it meant that I was going to now have to use my residual senses, which means my sense of smell, my sense of taste, my sense of touch, and also my sense of hearing, which also happens to be partially impaired. I'm partially hearing impaired as well. I hear only from my right ear. So I had to work with all of this and recreate an environment that was accessible and safe for myself to allow my family to feel confident that I could use the kitchen. So if I could do it, you can do it. What is required is the right information, the right knowledge to be able to do these kind of things. And there is no point in being extra brave and stubborn and decide that no, this I can do when you're hesitant, because the minute you're hesitant, it's a problem. But again, having said that, we're all going to be hesitant in the beginning. So what is it that we need to help ourselves understand our spaces and create this safe zone that is, believe me, an extremely satisfying place to be? Because being in the kitchen, being in control of, so many things, of being able to cook for yourself, to cook for your family. Nowadays on YouTube and things, there are so many recipes all over the place, and on TV you hear so many recipes, and we all want to make different things, new things. But how do we do it? So to begin with, what is most important is to understand your space, to understand your kitchen. Okay. Now, when a kitchen, we enter into kitchens that have already been existing for us in our homes. Our parents, our mothers have created those kitchens. Maybe in some homes, even our grandmothers have created those kitchens, and they've only been updated with new devices and new implements. But otherwise, the space is not something that you and I are used to, because it is not something that we have put ourselves. For everything, for our comfort, what is necessary is that we know where everything is in the kitchen. So when you keep touching things, when you keep looking for things and you're running around, it's almost as if you're exercising in the kitchen. You're jumping here, jumping there, you're hopping here. Suddenly you in the middle of something, you're doing something, and then you realize, oh my God, I forgot this. Then you're running. So early in the morning, in the time that you're supposed to be going to college, you're supposed to be going to work, or just doing your thing, you're exhausted because you're running around so much. So what is necessary is, when you step into the kitchen, you have to first convince your family that you are a capable individual who will take the right kind of steps and the right kind of safety measures to do this. So you involve them with it. Don't say that you stay out of the kitchen, I'm going to do this on my own. No. Tell them that you come work with me. Tell your mother, work with me. Tell your sister-in-law, whoever is handling the kitchen, tell them to work with you on it. Tell them you want to understand what is in the kitchen and learn what is kept where in your kitchen. So orientation is your first point. That's the most important thing. You need to orientate yourself to your kitchen, just as we do to everything else, to our workspaces, to our, study spaces, whatever it is. For instance, even our accessibility of our own devices that we use. So our orientation is the first thing that is most important. And you could also request them that you would like to be able to arrange certain things in a more convenient way for yourself. Now, for somebody, things kept a certain way, everything is kept a certain way by them. Ask them to help you rearrange it a little bit, because we can't change the structure of our kitchen. Now, where your work counter is, where your gas stove is, where your microwave is, where, let's say, your mixie is, where all your dal and, your rice and all those things are kept. We can't change those cupboards and those solid infrastructural spaces. But what we can do is to rearrange it in such a way wherein it helps our workflow. Next point, most importantly, after orientation, is addressing and understanding your workflow. Workflow, as you will all be aware, you would have all studied about it, means that you need to understand what is the order in which you need to do things. You go from one activity to another to accomplish a goal. But what happens again, if things are all over the place and haphazardly kept, you're wasting time, because you're going to hunt and you're searching and you're going to be looking for things, which is so pointless. It's a waste of energy and time. So what you do is you understand the space. Now, for instance, let me give you an example. You gather all your belongings. You're going to be doing one activity. Okay. Let's say early in the morning, we all pick up milk. Milk packets come to our doors, or some people have family members who go and buy the milk packets and come. Now, since we are in the midst of a pandemic, we know that we bring up bags of our packets of milk and we wash them thoroughly with soap or whatever methods we use to sanitize those packets. What are you going to do next? Your next activity is to use a pair of scissors or a knife to cut open that particular packet. And then you're going to be pouring that into a particular container, whether it is a milk boiler or whether it is any other utensil. You're going to be pouring into it, and then you're going to go to the gas stove or your induction stove or whatever and putting it up there. What are the equipment that you need? You need to keep your scissors or your knife handy. You need to keep your utensil that you're putting, or your milk boiler handy. All of those kind of things have to be there. Otherwise, what will happen? You would have gone, cleaned your packet of milk, kept it. Then you would have cut your packet open with a pair of scissors. And suddenly you realize you don't have your utensils. So you're standing there with an open milk packet, trying to go and find a utensil. You know how much of a disaster that can be. The entire milk will overflow out of the packet when you're trying to do things, or it's just going to get wasted unnecessarily. And so this causes a lot of mental confusion. And once you get confused in the kitchen, it is dangerous, because you lose orientation as well as lose your train of thought, and it can cause damage. So point 2, keep all your things together. As part of your workflow, whatever you're going to accomplish, keep everything together in one place and then do it. Doesn't matter. Initially, it'll probably take you a little bit of time to do these things. But remember, we have said that we are going to ask our families to help us organize our kitchens in such a way that we can do our own thing. So we are going to be able to do our own thing. And once you manage to accomplish that task, or for that matter, if you understand how things are already placed and you find that they're comfortable enough for you, let's work with just that. Why recreate, and reinvent the wheel? We don't need to do that. If we know where everything is kept, we keep, we keep this information in our minds thoroughly, because that's one of our strengths. Since we don't see, we use our other senses to ensure that we know what things are where. So in that case, once you've identified your workflow, you've identified where your things are kept, you gather everything in one place and then get down to accomplishing a task. That is, again, a very, very important thing to be able to do. Because once you've achieved that, then more than half of your job is done. It does not matter after that how you go about doing things, because the sense of satisfaction of having done that confidently, having managed to boil your milk, leave alone boiling milk, that is a different task. But the very fact that you've been able to do this for yourself is a very, very important, important factor, and will give you a lot of satisfaction and help you also understand what you need to do and how. So once this is done, you've done your, you've boiled your milk and you've probably made yourself a cup of tea and whatever it is. What is the next task that you need to do? Your next task is to be able to, I'm still working on workflow, okay? I'm still talking to you about workflow. We did orientation, wherein you understood where it was. Then we did the beginning of the workflow, where all your things are in the right place and where you're collecting everything that you need to do to accomplish a task. Now, after you've accomplished a task, what do? You clear up after yourself, always. Always. Don't expect someone else to come and pick up your things. That's another very important rule. A lot of people, a lot of our parents and, or even if we have a maid at home, they get fed up of the fact that, oh God, if this one is going to come in the kitchen, she's going to create a mess, or he's going to create a mess and go away, and then I have to clean everything after them. Now that is also a deterrent. So in that case, what happens? your mom will probably turn around and tell you, okay, leave it, it doesn't matter, I'll finish this quickly. This is a complaint that we hear from a lot of people. Lot of youngsters say, ma'am, my mother says, no, you'll take a lot of time to do this, let me finish it myself. Why do they do this? Sorry, because they seem to think that you don't have the capability to organize yourself, your minds, and organize your activities in such a way that you can accomplish it on your own. You don't need them to do anything. So once you've made, if let's say you've made your cup of tea, going with the same thought, you've made your cup of tea. Once your cup of tea is made, what is your job? Your job is to clear up, to clean the gas stove, to ensure in case, let's say we are new to this, and invariably milk and tea and everything will definitely boil over a little bit. Doesn't matter. Let it boil. It's okay. It's not calamity. Nothing can go wrong. You will make mistakes, and the more mistakes you make, as long as they're not dangerous ones, as long as you're not careless, those mistakes will only teach you what not to do the next time. So none of us are really born with every capability. We all learn, and we all educate ourselves and learn from our mistakes, okay? So let the milk boil over. But if you leave that milk, boiled over milk or tea on your gas stove for a long time, it's going to get burned because it's going to continue. Things will keep cooking on that and it'll continue burning, and the smell is awful and everything is awful, and then you can't clean it. So you're going to have one irritated mother, one irritated maid, one irritated sister-in-law over there. Clean after yourself, pick up after yourself, pick up all the utensils, throw out the tea leaves or whatever it is, and then put the things away like you took them, okay? That's a very, very important factor as well. So you have to do this for yourselves. Nobody else is going to do this. Learn, and always remember to pick your things from the place that you have and put them right back to where you took them from. Otherwise, just as everybody else is going to do, you are going to be confused and irritated. Leave specific instructions. This is all part of making your kitchens more accessible for yourselves. Make it a rule that when you're in the kitchen and when somebody else is around you and whatever, they are not going to pick up things from where you have kept and put them somewhere else, because it is disorienting and because it is irritating. It disorients me. Even today, when I've been cooking for 28 years, 30 years now. And even today, when somebody in my kitchen picks up something and puts it away, it just completely irritates me and it just puts me off very badly. It disorients me, and I want to just leave everything and walk out of the kitchen. So why allow that situation to even arise? Yes, mistakes happen. Sometimes people do that. But we have to keep insisting that these things should not happen. These things are my things. I'm using them. And so please don't do anything like this that is going to disorient me. Okay. So that's another point that you have to ensure that your people know that this has to be left this way. So now our spaces we've seen that we need to pick up our after ourselves. We have to create everything that is easy to do for ourselves. Now, placement of your things. Now, when you're placing things, you're in the kitchen is quite like a war zone. It's almost like a war zone. Like I told you, we have fire, we have electricity, we have sharp implements. So we have weapons of mass destruction right there with us. What are we going to do? We are going to ensure that we keep ourselves safe and keep others around us safe from any kind of untoward incidents and damage. Having said that, please remember, you're in the kitchen, you're going to be burning your fingers, you're going to be cutting your fingers, you're going to be, peeling nails off, and all of those things are going to happen. It doesn't matter. It's part of the whole thing. It's part of the learning process. But when you're doing this, please remember, it's not something that you do deliberately. It happens. It can happen for various reasons. It could happen just because you are not used to working with a particular knife or with a peeler or whatever it is, but it could also happen due to carelessness. The carelessness aspect is what one has to be very, very careful to remove out of their lives. Like I told you, it's a mind and body activity. It is a wholly present activity, working in the kitchen. You can't be thinking and daydreaming and everything and working in the kitchen, because remember, we don't see. So we don't have the visual backup, which will alert us to something. So we have to be very careful, completely present in the kitchen when you're working in the kitchen. Few safety tips that you need to definitely, adhere to and ensure that you know of is the fact that you try and this is for both men and women, please ensure that your sleeves are always rolled up. If you're wearing long sleeves for the boys, and for the girls, if you're wearing long sleeves or you have dupattas or you have sari pallus and things like that, please ensure that all of this is kept away when you're working at the gas stove, or for that matter, even when you're cooking, because it's when you're cutting up something on the counter and things, it's extremely irritating when you have something that keeps falling. You know, your chunni will be falling, and the dupatta will be, your sari pallu will be falling and things like that. And it's a messy space, so things get dirty. I would suggest, if you can, please use an apron. It's a good habit. It's a very, very good practice to have an apron to tie. It doesn't have to be a full thing from your neck down to your waist. You can take a piece of old cloth from the house and just tie it up at your waist, like a lungi. It can be from your upper waist down to just your knees or whatever, because that is the area that gets exposed the most, because we lean against the counter and we're working and things like that. So it happens. So please make it a practice to use an apron. Please use dusters. Please use cloth in the kitchen to wipe hands. Please make it a practice to wash your hands after every activity, because you're dealing with food and you're dealing with your own health and the health of your families. Please ensure you wash everything. You wash your vegetables. Nowadays, of course, we are washing everything thanks to Corona, but even otherwise, please ensure that you wash your hands after every activity. It's cleaner. Wash your knives, wash your peelers, wash the equipment that you use all the time, wipe them dry, and then reuse them, because it's just easier. You will see it's so much cleaner when you have clean hands and you want to begin another activity. It's just so much easier to do something like that. So back to safety tips, what you're going to do is you're using an apron, you're using a kitchen towel or a cloth, any cloth, it doesn't matter. And you're going to be very careful with your clothes. Your sleeves are not going to be long. Your sleeves are going to be rolled up. Your dupattas are going to be tied. Your hair is going to be tied. Please remember, this is for boys and for girls. I know the boys have short hair and things like that, but please ensure that you don't, now another thing that we do is we bend over our gas stoves, because what are we doing? We're trying to smell, we are trying to listen and things like that. And when something is cooking on the gas stove, we have this tendency to move up further and bend. Please don't do that. Avoid doing that, because what will happen is something that is there, that is cooking, can fly out of whatever is cooking over there, especially when you're putting things in oil, you're putting tadka, you're putting, mustard seeds and things like that. It can go into your eye and cause a lot of damage. If there's a pressure cooker, you can, the steam can suddenly escape, and there is nothing worse than the burn of a steam. So please be very careful. Do not bend. Do not put your faces in front of the gas stove, in front of the fire. Do not bend. Try and stay erect, stay straight, and work that way. It's always better. You'll still be able to get the smell. The smell is not going to go away. You just need to be patient. You will be able to smell. You will be able to, if you cannot smell, take a spoon. Keep a habit of keeping a spoon or another, serving spoon or a big spoon or something. And if you want to smell it, take a spoonful of whatever is cooking from inside there and bring it close to your nose slightly to be able to smell. At least that way you have just a small quantity of whatever there is to be exposed to yourself, and not a whole vessel full of something hot. So it is very important to follow, to ensure that you do these things. Now for fingers burning, please be careful when you're handling things that are on the fire, that are hot. Often enough, nowadays, we all use utensils that are, that have handles. We also we also suggest all the time that people like us should be using utensils that have handles that don't get hot. So ebonite handles, which nowadays most of the non-stick utensils and a whole lot of other utensils have those handles. So use those handles. Try also not to use cloth when you're trying to lift something from the gas stove. Avoid using cloth, because when you use cloth, there is always a chance that it can go into the fire. So you please be very careful. If you have to use a cloth, now it's always good to use a pair of pincers with which you can lift. It's called a pakad in Hindi. I don't know what you call it in Telugu, but basically the implement that you use to lift things from the fire. What happens with that is that you get a grip, correct grip, and to be able to lift it and pick it from one place and put it to another. But in case for some reason you are not comfortable doing that and you prefer using a cloth, ensure that your cloth is very tightly, folded into only that much that you need to pick the utensil. There should be no hanging pieces, hanging ends of the cloth or thread or something like that from the cloth that can catch fire the minute you lift it. So be extremely careful when you're handling cloth. I would still prefer it if all of you used pincers, or if you used utensils with handles. But I understand it's not always possible. All our kitchens don't have all of those things, and we have to, especially during these times or at any other times, it is always good to work with what we have and then build upon it as time goes along. Always keep your knives and your sharp implements with the handles toward yourself and the blades facing away. So whether it is in a plate, whether it is in a drawer, whether it is in a stand, whatever it is, please remember, when you're picking up a sharp implement, it should always be the handle that you touch and not the blade. Now, that is your responsibility to ensure that part of your entire accessibility exercise is to ensure that your family knows that this is the way it should be kept. It's safe even for them. Sometimes if they don't realize also, they will end up cutting their fingers. Because what will happen is that you will pick up your knife with a blade. It could be a sharp edge. It could be a corner. It could be anything. And you will end up cutting your finger. And sometimes that can be very, very dangerous, and you can hurt yourself really badly on that. So these are all the things, and even other things. For instance, your serving spoons and your cooking spoons and all the spoons that you use to do your work. Always, isn't it easier for you when you imagine it, when you envision something like that in your mind? Isn't it easier if you have something that you can pick from the handle straight away and use it? Because it's just easy to, pick the handle instead of picking up from the other side. So ensure that you do these things. Keep all your things in one place, all your cloth and things like that that you have, that I've said, your cooking cloth and stuff like that. Please keep them away from the fire, away from your gas stove, away from the source of heat. Keep your plastic, any of your plastic storage containers and all also away from your fire. In case you're bringing them close to the fire, preferably take out whatever you need from a plastic container, put it into something, a small plate or something like that, a small bowl, and bring it to the fire and put it up, rather than picking up a steel, a plastic vessel, or bowl or dabba or whatever that might be. To put that and bring it close to the fire, and then again, there's a chance of calamity. So these are the few safety measures that you need to ensure. Always keep a first aid kit handy in the house, a basic first aid kit, which has, your band-aids and a gauze and a burn cream and a small pair of scissors to be able to cut up the bandage, and a skin cream, an antiseptic cream, and things like that. Just keep a few of these things handy because you need it. And there are various things in our homes. We are told various things about, what helps, and you can use haldi when your finger cuts and all that is true. But it always helps to have a decent medical first aid kit available for any of these other disasters as well. Now we will move from your safety aspects. Girls, I've told you, please ensure your hair is tied back, because I've noticed a lot of times, apart from hair falling into the food, the hair comes very, very close to the fire sometimes. So please be extremely careful with that. Now we will move to our storage and identification of our raw material. Now, what is the raw material that we're using in the kitchen? Multitudes of raw material we're using. We're using all kinds of things over there. We're using, different homes, different things, multiple varieties of dal, multiple varieties of rice, multiple varieties of flours, and everything else, masalas that we are going to keep in different places. And often these are difficult things to identify for us because we are not using our eyesight. But is it impossible? Of course not. It's not. What are we using? We're using our residual senses, which is way more superior than anybody else's. Our sense of smell, taste, touch, and hearing is extremely sharp when compared to a lot of other people who are depending only on their eyesight. They're only looking at everything, and half the time they'll tell you, oh, but I can't find this. Where is this? It will be under their nose, but they're not going to bother because they are only looking at it. What are we doing? We are touching it. So our sense of touch is extremely superior. So let us use those senses, our residual senses, and put them to good use to become absolutely efficient cooks and home managers. So what are we going to do? Now, let me tell you how I identify and how I segregate things in my kitchen. Now, my kitchen, there are various kind of things, okay? So now, as far as my lentils and my dals and all of that go, I have chana. I have the big chana, I have the small chana, the black chana, I have chana dal. Then I have different kinds of dals. I have the, okay, I'll use a little bit of, I think, my knowledge of Telugu of these dals. So there is minapappu. That minapappu is, we use whole minapappu, then we use broken minapappu, then we use minapappu with the peel. And then we use that full round peeled minapappu, which is called, I think, kota dal. So we use that. Then I use pesarapappu of different kinds. There's the green whole pesarapappu, then there's the yellow pesarapappu. Now, all of these things, then I'm using chana dal, that is chana pappu. I'm using kandipappu. I'm using all these kinds of dals. And if you put your hand in, suddenly you can get extremely confused with what there is. So there are a couple of things that you can do. One, if you think it is possible, you can have things in different dabbas, different shaped dabbas. Now that is a little bit of a challenge because invariably when we go to buy dabbas in a supermarket or bottles, they all come in a set of 6. They're cheaper, they're better. And you just pick up one set and come away. Now, who's going to go looking around separate? I want round, I want flat, I want long, I want short. All that is a problem. So let's start segregating by size. Okay. So my bigger grains that are there, like my full grains, I call them my whole grains, like my chana, full chana, my black chana. Then I use something called lobia. I don't know what it is called in Telugu, but it's that is what is called a black-eyed bean. Then there is rajma, which is a kidney bean. Now, all of these are large beans. So I always keep them at the back, right at the back of the cupboard where my things, my pulses are kept. I keep them right at the back. Okay. Then I keep my whole dals. Now, my green moong, my green pesarapappu, then my black, minapappu, and all of those. I keep those full dals. Then there is the masoor dal also. Unfortunately, again, I don't know what that's called. It's a brown colored dal. So now the full dals I keep in the next row before that. Now, after that, I keep the broken dals that have peels. Now, as you get used to doing things, you will realize that when you put your hands into the dabba of dal, you will realize that you can understand the difference by the shapes and the sizes, because a chana dal is a bigger, fatter dal than your tur dal. Okay, that is, when you look at your tur dal is slightly rounded. It's a smaller dal like the chana dal, but slightly flatter. So that's your tur dal. Now, in the same shape, you have what is the masoor dal, which is the pink colored dal, which is almost the same shape, but flat completely. So these dals, once you start using it and once you start identifying them, they become very simple to identify, but there is always chance of error. I'm not saying there's no chance of error. Like if you touch the, let's say a split moong, like your minapappu and your pesarapappu, if you have to touch those dals, they seem almost similar. Shape, size, everything is almost similar. But if you put your hand into your urad dal, which is also the minapappu, when you put your hand in and rub it, you will see that there is a slight powderiness that comes on your hand. So that is a thing that only happens with Minapappu. It does not happen with so much with the moong dal. It does not. It happens more with this particular dal. So those kind of things, as you go along, you will begin to understand. Your first row of dals, of course, will be what you use most regularly on a daily basis. So always keep those dals in the first row, because you know you're going to be using kandipappu every day. You know you're going to be using, say, let's say pesarapappu every day. Whatever in your house is used most often, keep it in the first row, so you don't have to go digging at the back all the time and things. So these are small little tips that you can follow. Yes, never underestimate the power of labeling your dabbas. Whatever way you think you can label it. You want to use a sonic labeler, please use a sonic labeler. You want to use braille labels, use braille labels. You want to put bump-ons, those little stickers you get, you use stickers. Whatever. It is always helpful to create these little markers for yourself, and always preferably put these markers on the lid, so that your lid can be cleaned easily, just washed away, and that same lid can be reused for whatever bottle that has come. Your bottle can be washed and things, but you can easily reuse your lid with the same sticker. You're not wasting those stickers and not reusing them all the time, or not having to recreate those stickers all the time. So these are a few things that you can perhaps use to identify it. Usually rice and is always in a bigger container. That's very easy to identify. Now your various flours that are there, even let's say atta, our wheat flour that we use for chapatis, those also we know are usually in larger quantities, comes in a big dabba, so that will sit in one big dabba and one some corner place. The other things that we tend to use are the ravas, the various kind of ravas that we're using. We're using suji, which is Bombay rava. You're using rice flour. Then you're using, chana papu, that is, chana flour, that is your besan you're using. So all of these kind of flours that are there, preferably if you can do it, put it in the fridge, because it increases their shelf life. Otherwise outside, there is a chance that it will get spoiled. It gets little bugs and little creatures that come into it, and then sometimes it gets spoiled. So it's a good practice to refrigerate this. Now, how do you touch these flours are not easy to identify. Some of them, like your besan, that is your chana flour, you can still smell and identify, because that has a very distinct smell. But from your rice flour to your maida also you can identify. Maida, if you put your hand into a maida dabba, it is extremely fine. It's called refined flour. That's the reason why it's called refined flour. It's a very, very fine flour that you can easily identify. Besan and this maida, you can do suji, Bombay rava, that you can also identify. Dalia, that is broken wheat, that also you can identify. That's not difficult. But there are these other things like a rice flour also. Actually, texture-wise, the rice flour is also coarse, but I get confused between ragi and rice. So I would suggest that it would be a good idea to perhaps, label these, so that you don't mix it all up and make a mistake. As far as your oil and ghee and those kind of things, my suggestion to you is to please not use plastic utensils to save your ghee, to store your ghee and your oils, for the simple reason that these are very difficult to clean. If you have a stainless steel or a glass utensil that you can use, again, glass, please use glass very, very circumspectly, because these are things that can break and can cause a lot of damage. So stainless steel is our best friend, because stainless steel is easy to clean, stainless steel is hygienic, and stainless steel is easily available and very simple to clean. Because if you have your ghee dabba, you can have your ghee dabba, you get cans to put your oil in, like those milk cans of old days. So you get cans like that with wonderful spoons that are like mini small versions of your sambar spoon and your rasam spoon that we use at home. So similarly, you get a much smaller scaled down version of a spoon that is your a spoon for your oil. So that also gives you the correct measure of how much you're taking out each time you use. I use that and I swear by it. You can't go wrong. Your oil will not be in excess or too little. Your ghee, you can use an ordinary spoon because ghee solidifies. It becomes solid also. So sometimes it's very easy to take out ghee. Oil you can get mistaken with. So my suggestion to please use stainless steel containers and cans for your ghee and oil. Next is your masalas. Now your masalas are lying in different places. Every home uses different masalas. There is a multitude of masalas that we use in the Indian kitchen, which is the beauty of the Indian kitchen. So personally, I use a masala dabba, which is very popular and very common in a lot of homes, which is one big dabba with small containers inside that can hold different masalas. So that I use for my regular use. So my salt is always in the center, and my what are they called? They're called popu ginjalo, I think. So for those homes that use the popu ginjalo regularly, you can keep your rai, your jeera, your chana papu and your mina papu and your mirchi, your dry red chili. In that, you can keep your red chili powder. I think it has maybe 6 or 7 containers. So whatever is most commonly used on a day-to-day basis, please keep that. It's a good thing to have salt in the middle because you can't miss it. It's a good thing to have all the whole masalas like your rai, jeera, methi seeds and whatever else you keep together, and then the powders together, which means your if you're using jeera powder, dhania powder, haldi and red chili powder. Now whatever else you keep in this, whatever you use on a regular basis, you keep in this, and you establish an order for yourself, what works best for you. Tell your family also to always follow that particular order and not to mess with it. It's not very difficult to tell them not to change the order of things. The rest of the masalas that you use, now there are many masalas, like I said, there are meat masalas, chicken masalas, there are these kura karams and nalla karam and this karam and that karam, all of those particular things that we have, many things that we use, chana masala and pav bhaji masala. Now all of these kinds of masalas are not things that we use regularly. So it's good to keep them in small containers away from your gas stove, but in a place where you can easily reach them. Have a separate space that has all your masala dabbas. Label them. If you can open it and smell it and figure it out, fabulous. But be careful. If something goes up your nose, you're in deep trouble, Chili powder. Chili powder, you can easily find out the texture of a garam masala powder and what's it called? Your dhania powder. They are coarse, they are rough, and they're not soft and smooth. What is soft and smooth is haldi. Your haldi is very smooth. So it's very easy, and haldi has a very distinct smell. A lot of people say that when they use this masala dabba, the smells become confusing for them because there are too many things in that and it becomes a little confusing. Now, that is something that you have to establish for yourself, whether that works for you better or whether separate dabbas of spices works for you better. So that I will leave to your discretion and your understanding in whatever works for you, and use it accordingly. So this is about a very brief thing about this, your masalas and how to identify your masalas. More details are available on my YouTube channel. It's in Hindi for those who can understand. It's a mixture of Hindi and English. It's called Rasoi Ke Rahasya, in which I have very detailed explanations of all these things that I'm just skimming past with you because of the amount of time, and so that we can have a conversation about this later. But for those that are interested, they can go across to YouTube and look for Rasoi Ke Rahasya. I'm sure Uma can give you a link to that as well. And you can follow that and see if it helps you. And I'm always available on email to get in touch whenever you'd like. So these are the basics that we've established. Now, how we see, there are different appliances that we use in the kitchen to make our lives easier. Okay. Modern day homes have a lot of very useful devices that are available for us to make our kitchens and our lives easier. Among them are simple things that we've been using, our parents have been using for ages. That's the mixie, food processors, mixer grinders, you have nowadays, of course, for many years, you have the microwave oven, you have the oven toaster griller, you have sandwich toasters, you have, what's it called? You have multi-purpose kettles, you have the induction stove, you have, what's it called? You have your blenders for your fruit juices and for your, smoothies and your lassi and all those kind of things. So you have those available. And that is among others. And then, of course, the most helpful modern day invention is the vegetable choppers. Okay, they have vegetable choppers that are both electrical as well as manual. So these are extremely helpful devices and very accessible to be able to use and very easily available in various brands around our supermarkets, rather the malls and things like that, or a Chroma or a Big Bazaar, or even your Lifestyle and Shopper Stop and many other regular, electrical appliances shop will now have all of these things. So you have dry masala grinders, which are small little grinders that only do dry masalas. You have coffee grinders that do, for those who use coffee beans, those kind of things are very easily available in the market these days. You have manual choppers, which is basically a dabba with, a lid that you sort of put a vegetable in it and you knock it down and it kind of cuts your vegetable and it falls in the dabba. So that is also a way of doing things. Make use of this. They are not expensive appliances, especially these that I'm talking about are not really very, very expensive appliances to have, but these ensure that we get independent in the kitchen. The multi-purpose. So there's a brand called Koryo, which is a brand, Big Bazaar's own brand. Now, these people in Koryo, what they do is they use, they have a lot of, when we had done our workshops, we had identified these few pieces of equipment that we found were extremely accessible and easy to use for people like us. So in that case, a multi-purpose kettle is very helpful. So it's a kettle that you can adjust. It's electrical and it's a deep hollow kettle, and you can keep a utensil inside. You can boil milk in that. You can boil eggs in that. You can make your Maggi noodles in that. You can make tea with the utensil in that, or you can boil your vegetables also. You can put water and boil vegetables in that. So that one kettle can perform a whole lot of functions for you. Milk boilers are extremely helpful. A lot of homes in South India have been using milk boilers for generations. A milk boiler is extremely helpful for people like us, because when they make when the milk boils, you hear a sharp whistle and you know your milk is done, and the milk does not boil over and ruin your gas stove. So that's another very, very good piece of equipment. I'm sure all of you already know about your mixers, grinders, and things like that. So microwave ovens. Now, what happens these days is that we have a lot of devices that come with touchscreens, which have just nothing, very fancy, beautiful looking machines that are there, a beautiful, shiny new microwave, but you touch it and what is there? There's a blank screen because it's a touchscreen. How useless is a touch screen for people like us? It's very upsetting and it's extremely irritating. You have a washing machine that will come and that will also have that. You will have something else, new television that will come and that will be exactly like that. What can we do? We can't help but have to adapt to this, because unfortunately for us, the market has this. And a lot of people say, why can't we have talking equipment? There was a talking microwave available. There was a talking washing machine available, and there was a talking this available and that available. But why do we need talking equipment? I mean, it's so much more expensive because it wasn't made for countries like ours or people like us, because it's way, way more expensive. Every accessible piece of equipment that becomes so much more expensive because they are not following the mantra of universal design. If they were to think of universal design, and at the point that they created this equipment, if they tried to make it accessible, it wouldn't have been so difficult. But having said that, let's not forget that we can easily make things adaptable for ourselves. What does it need? It needs one person who's sighted in your home who can orient you to that and tell you How many times do you need to press a particular thing for you to reach a particular place? And from like a microwave, my washing machine, all of them have only LCD panels, but I have created and made it accessible for myself by putting little bindis on it, or putting those bump-ons on it, stickers, or whatever you want to on it, in places from where you need to press it. And somebody will explain to you that every press of the microwave is 30 seconds. So, when you're doing 2 minutes, you do 30 seconds, you do that those many times and you're done. And the other side of the panel will have another bindi where you have to turn it off in the middle. You can just press it and it's turned off. Similarly, there are microwave ovens with many other functions. All it takes is one patient person to explain to you that if you want to change modes of your microwave, and if you want to do this to that and that to this, all it takes is for somebody to explain to you and for you to mark that particular area on the LCD with a bindi, with a dot, with whatever is most conveniently available to you, and learn how to press it and how many times to press it to do that. Similarly, even with your washing machine, you can do those kind of things. These are important things because this is what is going to create an inclusive society and an inclusive home. Otherwise, for those who can even afford it, for your parents to go or for your family to go out and buy special equipment for you to use, it's a waste of space. It's a waste of resource. It is so pointless to do those kind of things. So let's work around figuring out whatever we can do, however best we can make it accessible for ourselves in the limited resources that are available. That doesn't mean that we can't go out and buy new things. Of course we can. Why shouldn't we? There are non-stick vessels. There are, induction-friendly utensils and things that we can use that are easier for us to use. Let's use that. So let's invest very carefully and in a circumspect manner wherein we are not creating repetitions of pieces of equipment in our kitchen, but creating resources for ourselves that will ultimately help us as individuals to do things better. There are other pieces of equipment that are available, which I find extremely handy when I'm cooking and I'm baking, is measuring cups, measuring spoons. Yes, I have one talking equipment available. That is a kitchen weighing scale that I have. That is a talking weighing scale I have. I have not seen it available in India. I don't know if it is available now. So that's a talking equipment because I do a lot of baking and I need a very, very specific measurements. You can look for Braille labeled measuring spoons and cups. I'm not sure whether those are available because again, I got that internationally. Having said that, you get regular measuring spoons and all. And like I said, we can make them all accessible by creating little Braille dots, a Braille for those who read Braille, those who don't. You can create your own measures, you can keep your own make your own signs over there and things like that. So essentially, everything is completely possible. You can go out there and shop for your own things. You can buy your own vegetables. You can buy your own things in supermarkets. You know that Big Bazaar organizations like Big Bazaar have the assisted shopping facility available, wherein you can call them or get onto their website and book an assisted shopping trip, which means that you will have somebody who will over there help you, who's going to, from Big Bazaar, when you book a time and you reach there, there will be somebody who's going to help you in all your shopping, help you to pick up all your things, your list, help you to bill and then to leave Big Bazaar in whatever mode of transport you want to go in. So make use of those facilities that are available. Let's not forget that when somebody is creating opportunity for us, it is necessary for us to also support them by using those opportunities, by making the best of. Yes, it's not always easy, but at least for an experience, it's important that you go out there and experience it. Go pick your own vegetables. For those who haven't gone and bought their own vegetables, whether it's boys or girls, the thrill of picking up your own vegetables and fruits, touching everything, it is an extremely thrilling experience because we are tactile people. We are people who use our sense of touch so often. So let us use all of those senses to the best of our abilities and go out there and do things, become independent one step at a time. We don't have to accomplish everything in one go. There is absolutely no need to sit here today. It's easy for me to sit here who's been cooking for 30 years to turn around and tell you, okay, but you can do this. You can do this. No, it's not okay. But I also believe it is doable. I know that each of you has the strength, has the interest, has the mental makeup. The very fact that you're sitting here listening to me for the past 1 hour means that you are interested in wanting to know what are the possibilities and how can you create this opportunity for yourself. Believe me, this opportunity is absolutely there waiting for you to happen. All you need to do is open your minds. You have to be afraid, okay? Being afraid means you will be careful. But being afraid should not mean that you don't even attempt it. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, remember? So till you don't make an attempt, don't give up. Don't ever give up. You'll probably burn a vegetable once. You'll probably cut a finger once. You'll probably end up, instead of making a sambar, you'll end up making something else. Instead of cutting one vegetable, you'll cut the wrong vegetable. That's okay. It doesn't matter. It's not the end of the world. There are always, give yourself a break. Give yourself a chance. And remember, if your family members are saying no to something, it is your responsibility completely to tell them, to show them that you're confident and to show them that you're ready to do what it takes to get there and become independent and to become an assistant. You don't want to sit there and have someone constantly feeding you. You want to be a caregiver as well. You want to be able to do this. So take this opportunity to talk to your families, to go over all the points that I've spoken with you about orientation, about work, about your workflow, about safety, about storing your equipment, about how you can be capable and what is good for you. You know, knowledge is power. You know what is good for you and you know how to do it. So get out there and start living your life. And we're always there to support you. I'm always available for any kind of question and answers or anything I can help you with, because this is a life goal that all of us need to achieve sooner than later, and then embark on this activity constantly. It's an ongoing process. I'm learning every day. Every single day I learn something. So let's get together and do this, and all the best to all of you. Back to you, Uma.
Thank you so much. It's been a great time, listening to your experiences and the tips that you've given. Yes, there is nothing less thrilling than picking up our own vegetables, and also it is equally thrilling to cook your own food and feeding
Absolutely
to others. So it's been a great time. I just want to share one experience before we jump into Q&A session. So I got a call from somebody yesterday, somebody who's 100% visually impaired. So this guy was constantly talking about being blind. I'm blind. I'm 100% blind. I don't see. I can't see. How would I cook? How can you even have a session like this about cooking, because we can't cook? Then I said, dude, the person who's giving the speaker is also visually impaired. So I think there's a big problem here. So it's like we all love to self-pity ourselves, and we all love to constrain ourselves to some very small cocoons. So let's just try. Let's just there are a lot of things, trial and error methods, and so it's not like you're going to cook your first biryani right away. Absolutely. On the first day.
And also we have to remember, we have to give other people the benefit of the doubt as well. They are also basically coming from a space of uncertainty and fear. They don't know whether you're going to be safe or you're not, and they're coming from that space.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you cannot allow them to walk all over you and dwell upon the fact that you're blind, so you can't do that.
Yes.
That's it.
I know. So also a lot of points that you've told, I was really happy that I was implementing many of them, because because I started cooking, and for me cooking is like a meditation, and I love cooking. So we start, sometimes we fail badly. I wanted to cook something and I ended up cooking something else altogether different. So but later I learned, so all that it takes for you to have a great kitchen is to start. So start now itself.
Just open your mind to it and tell yourself you can do it. That's it.
Yes. So be fearful, but not paranoid. So yeah, on this note, I would just like to start the Q&A session. So what I'll do is I'll unmute all of you, or allow you to unmute yourselves. So if you, yes, you can unmute yourselves. If you guys have any doubts, any experience that you want to share, if you just want to talk to Payal, you can unmute yourself and start asking your questions right away.
Am I audible?
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
This is Prem Bhagwan from Chittoor, Andhra Pradesh.
Yes. Good.
Ma'am, do we can use iron vessels for cooking or normal as because nowadays I came to hear that iron vessels are more healthier than the vessels what we are using right now.
Like what? What do you mean? Methods of cooking, as in?
Yeah, like tawas and
See, there is what is happening today is we are basically going back to what your grandmother, my great grandmother did. Okay, we've come back all the full circle. We've come to that. So the healthier aspects. The reason why I said non-stick utensils that are Teflon coated are actually not the best things to use because they are a synthetic material and they burn easily. But if you take care with using those utensils kindly and use them properly in the correct way that it should be used, they can be like it's fire. Like fire, they say they can be your best friend and worst enemy. Similarly, but having said that, the concentration nowadays is on iron, on cast iron. So what probably your grandmother sat and used, and I know my grandmother used it because and also earthenware. Just terracotta, matti pots and matti tawas and kadais, they've all gone back. They are healthier, definitely. There's no doubt about it. But in just looking at the healthier aspects, if that is going to stop us from being able to cook altogether, use an induction stove. See, the induction stove cooking is also supposed to be very good because induction stove cooking, the vessels, you can't use, you have to use either stainless steel alloys, that is, what's it called, carbon steel or stainless steel or cast iron. These are the few things that you can use on an induction stove. So these are good things to use, but you get non-stick utensils also for them. The cooking is healthier, the cooking is quicker, it is safer. So you can adopt those kind of methods also to cook.
Thank you, ma'am.
There's a small appeal. So if you want to talk, just kindly raise your hand because that will allow us to make things a little bit tidier. So Sarda, you can talk.
Good evening, Payal.
Good evening. I'm sorry, I can't hear you very clearly.
You can be a little closer to your microphone. You're not really audible.
Sorry, am I audible now?
Your volume is too low.
Am I audible now?
Better. Yes, better.
Okay. I have been a person for the last 10 years now.
No, gone again.
Yeah, Sarda, we can't really.
I'm so sorry. Maybe somebody else can.
No, this is much clearer. Now it's absolutely clear. Absolutely
okay.
clear.
Okay. Payal, I have a question that, while making coffee, what is the trend at home is we try boiling milk in the milk pan, and then I put a little coffee on the coffee mug and with some jaggery, and then I want to pour the milk directly from the stove, which is from the pan where there is boiling milk. Every time what happens is I take a small ladle and then pour it. Although I do that, but because of low lighting or maybe because I have problems in the light as well, so it always spills. So is there any trick or are there special equipments and where I can measure? measure so
It
that
spills. It spills very often. Even today, I burn fingers. I spill alcohol. I ensure I'm very close to the sink so that I can mop it all up quickly. But a good thing to do is try and find a vessel, a saucepan with a handle.
Mhm.
You know, you get some very simple saucepan, stainless steel saucepans with
Mhm.
a longish handle,
Yes.
and it has a spout in the front. Okay,
Correct.
the mouth of the rim of the saucepan has a little spout. So what
Correct.
happens is, once you have a spout like that, it just becomes easier to pour directly. With the ladle, there are two things that will happen with the ladle. One, your coffee will never be hot enough,
Mhm.
because once you've picked up the milk from the pan and you've put it into your cup, the temperature is lost a little bit. Your coffee is never really that hot. So I would suggest that, depending on how many cups of coffee, if you're making a single cup of coffee, what you can do is, these are not expensive and difficult things to find in any stainless steel shop or whatever it is. Or use whatever one utensil, the smallest utensil that is useful for you.
Mhm.
Use that, because that is easier to manage. Instead of the ladle, I would suggest you try pouring it. How comfortable are you with pouring directly?
Actually, I can pour, but the only thing is I don't know when it comes to a fill. That is my problem with it, and it overflows.
No, but then in that case, what you should do is you can always be, your measurement has to be correct. So when you're measuring your, don't take it from the main pan of milk, okay, from wherever the milk is being boiled. Measure your milk for how much ever milk you need for your coffee. Measure that much, exactly that much. 1 cup, if you're taking 1 cup, say, let's say 3/4 cup of milk and maybe 1/4 cup of water or whatever. Fill that much only and take a separate vessel and boil it in that. So that way,
Correct.
what will happen is that you will have exactly that quantity that needs to go into the mug and not extra.
Yeah.
Does that
I
make
should try
sense?
to. Yes, it does, because what I was trying to do is that the 2 liter or 3 liter milk that is
No, that's
entirely
very
yeah,
unwieldy. That's very
yeah,
difficult
correct.
to handle. Don't
Yeah,
do
that
that.
is what. Yeah. So what I used to do is I used to take a ladle and I
Yeah.
counted the number of spoons that needs to. But even then, you know what happens? Maybe at times the ladle is full. At times the
Yeah,
ladle is
absolutely.
half.
Or when you're
Yeah.
taking it, you're taking it from the milk utensil, from the vessel to
Correct.
your cup, it'll
Correct.
fall in the middle.
Correct.
So don't do that. Just measure exactly the cup, whatever cup you use, measure that much, take a separate vessel, heat your milk in that and pour out of that. That way you'll get exactly the quantity you need for your cup.
Correct. One more question I have, Payal.
Yes, please.
Is that I use the masala dan, that masala dabba, but I have a lot of problems when I use a spoon to take out my masalas, because I don't know
don't
whether
use a spoon.
I
Do
use the
not use a
fingers.
spoon for
Yes.
anything.
Yes,
I do not use a spoon for anything. You will hear, if you listen to my channel, where I've talked about dab masalas, I have very clearly mentioned that I do not use spoons. I only use spoons for very, very specific, where I'm following a very specific recipe and they tell me 2 spoons salt, and it's only salt that I worry about. I don't worry about any of the other masalas. Please do not hesitate to use your fingers.
I do that. So is that there's absolutely no problem?
Absolutely. Just keep your hands clean. Like I said, ensure that your hands are clean and dry, because your masala dabba, if you're slightly, sometimes, like I've had a few people ask me that my masalas get spoiled in my dabba. Why do my masalas get spoiled? I said, are you putting wet hands in it?
Wet hands,
yes, sometimes it is difficult to clean. I said, why is it difficult to clean? Because they're doing one activity and then continuing. But that's not an excuse. What I do when I'm using masalas and things, invariably, I'm very obsessed with washing my hands. My knife, I cut potato, I'll clean it, then cut onion, then cut. I have to clean it. Similarly for my fingers as well. I ensure, and that's why I told you, keep a duster, keep a cloth with you, that you can wipe your fingers and then use the masala. Please use your hands. It's the most hygienic and the best way to do it.
Yeah, thanks, Payal. Although
No.
I have a lot of questions, but I would like to give others a chance.
What did you say your name was? I'm sorry.
Sarita,
Farida. Where are you based, Farida?
I'm born and brought up in Kolkata, but married in Hyderabad. I'm the
Ah,
part
you're
of
in
Voice of. Yes, I'm a part of the Voice of VIP team. I'll talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Take my
Separately.
contact
Sure.
number. Take my contact number and
Sure,
get in touch.
sure, sure.
Right.
And otherwise, it was a wonderful session, and I could relate to each and every point that you spoke, especially that apron part. Actually, you tend to put your hands on your, you know. Clothes or yeah, it is absolutely necessary
Yes,
to keep
we
the
do
dust.
that. I know it.
Yeah,
I'm
and
glad.
and I always want to peep in my utensil. I put lower my head. I could relate to each and every point that
I
you
know
spoke.
That's because all of us have done it. That's the reason why.
Yeah, but thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Giving the
Get in
mic
touch
to
with
Uma
me,
and
Farida.
others. Sure,
Please do.
sure,
Yeah.
sure, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, ladies, we have Karthik. Karthik, can you unmute yourself and talk?
Sure, Uma. Thanks a lot. Hi, everyone. This is Karthik Kova. I'm from Dubai. And first of all, I would like to say, Uma, you guys are doing a great job. We need more sessions like these, which are going to inspire us.
So
And,
it says Karthik the Traveler, is it?
Yes.
Hi, Karthik. Glad to talk to you.
Good. Thank you. And Mrs. Payal Kapoor, thanks a lot for sharing your experience with us. It gives a lot of booster for people like us to cook more and more, being independent.
Hi, Karthik. Thank you so much. I'm glad. I hope I'm going to see many more gentlemen cooks.
Yeah. In fact, I do love cooking. I've been cooking since last more than a decade.
Oh, excellent. That's really wonderful.
Yeah.
It's so good. And it's such a cathartic activity.
Yeah. So one question I wanted to ask you is, what message do you want to give to the parents of visually challenged who wants to get involved in cooking?
See, my only advice to them is to give them a chance. See, sometimes I've noticed what happens with a lot of the parents is that they don't know how to begin, especially parents who, whether they have children who've been congenitally blind or children like people like myself who lost their sight in the middle of their lives. Often enough, it is not that they don't want you to do things. It is because they don't know how. So give them a chance also. And the only other thing that I would say is that these kind of activities that we're doing, please spread this among them. I've done other sessions where I've actually had people who've told me that they have had their families listening in, their mothers listening in, and whoever their caregivers are. I have been
even in this session we have parents.
Yeah, because it just becomes easier for them to understand how to begin. And once they know how to begin, I was 22 years old, a complete individual who did everything on my own when I lost my eyesight. My mother, who had left the kitchen to me completely before that, suddenly was at a loss about how to get me started once again. I was a hotelier, a hotel management student who had her hands completely in place and everything. But she didn't know how. But she knew that the one way to begin orientation was to start getting me to cut vegetables once again. Because that is something like riding a bicycle. Cooking is like riding a bicycle when you don't forget how to cook. But what you forget is how to go about it in a different way, in a more safe manner. So when I first I share this with everybody every time when my rehabilitation was happening. And my teacher was a blind man himself, who was this completely independent person. And he came home to teach me how to cook. He walked into the kitchen and he told my mother, okay, I want this. And I still remember, I was going to make a bhindi fry. And he said, I need this and I need this. And he put everything there. And he told me, okay, now you light the fire, light the flame. That's again another activity you need to begin with. So turn the gas on. My mother stood very far away in the kitchen. Okay, she was almost at the door. So when it came to heating the oil and putting in the jeera and putting in the bhindi, when I took my first handful of lady's finger to put into the fire, my mother turned around and walked out of the kitchen. She was so afraid that I was going to burn myself. My fingers will burn, my clothes will burn, the house will burn, everything will burn. She was like probably in that kind of a state. And she just walked out. And much later, when she walked in, the bhindi was ready and she was like, okay, it's done, no? So I'm happy. So that's it. It's only this. Give yourselves a chance, give your wards a chance, join us, talk to us, ask us. We will tell you how. That's the important.
I think you put it in a great way. A strong message to all the parents. It gives them more chance for people like who are visually challenged. Give them more confidence, like you said. And thanks for answering that.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Karthik. I mean, it's been great listening to you because you're all the way from Dubai and sitting patiently. So, Payal, it seems you're internationally popular.
It's my pleasure.
So, Jyoti, AS Jyoti, can you unmute yourself and talk?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, very clearly, Jyoti.
Okay, thank you so much, Payal, and more than that, Uma Shankar, thank you so much bringing the no informative session for us. And my question is that yes, I'm also a working woman and I do cook. Then whatever the safety measures things you told already we are implementing. But one thing I would say, when we are getting into the activity, so we will know the challenges and we will come up with our own ways to do it. So I would request all of my friends to you just start the getting orientation of the kitchen and gas stove, and after that you start no do the things, so then your parents also will get the confidence on you. So this is the
Absolutely.
small suggestions. And yes, even I also lost my vision when I was in 20 years old. So from the last 2 years, I started cooking it. So I'm enjoying actually. So
Absolutely.
yes. So
No, it's
my
a very, very good activity. And what you're saying absolutely makes sense. That's why I
correct.
said it's important to work with what we have, rather than having to recreate. Like you said, you've created confidence in your family to be able to do this again. It's a very, very important suggestion.
Correct. So even now, me and my husband are staying, but I am only doing all the work. So before I didn't have any no experience cooking and all, because my parents are very scared. They were not allowing me to enter into the kitchen.
Yes.
So the situations come and I took up. So it's very happy, when we are doing our own. That doesn't matter whether you are cooking tasty or not, but do the things properly, carefully.
Absolutely.
So that is makes a lot of difference.
And tasty also will come once you
Yeah,
continuously do the act.
definitely,
And you cannot
definitely.
give up. See, things will burn, things will get spoiled, all that will happen. But that doesn't mean that you give up and say, okay, I can't do it because I can't cook a tasty meal, I will not cook. That is not necessary.
Correct. Because when we are doing our own, no, we will have lot of interest. So when we are
Absolutely.
putting interest, no, of course the taste will be good. So
Totally.
my questions to you is that I'm able to do many of the dishes, but only I scared to cooking the oily food. So how you will cook? Can you give some tips?
See, you have to
Tips
be very careful. Oily food is a scary thing to work with. It's something that needs more care than other things do.
correct.
So, couple of tips that I use is one, when you are pouring oil into the kadai, please make sure that your kadai is a large, it should be big and your oil should be a little lesser, just
Correct.
about half the kadai. So what will happen is, see, because people who can see can fill a kadai right to the top and then continue frying without any problem. For us, the oil can spill over and we can have a big fire. So I always suggest use a big kadai, fill your kadai only about half.
Okay.
Okay, as much as you need for deep fry. Then in that case, what will happen is that way, even if let's say you're frying a puri, if you put your puri in also, even and your puri comes up and you have to turn your puri also, when you turn the puri is when your oil will splash. But because your oil in the pan, in the kadai is only half, there is no danger of the puri falling out or the oil falling out.
Okay.
Correct? So don't overfill anything. Do that. Maintain your heat. Your heat, when you start frying, you have to control your heat, because frying completely on a high flame will burn something. Completely low flame will not cook something. So
Okay.
since you are already cooking, you know how to manage heat. Learn how to
Yes.
manage your heat with oil. Be very careful when you're pouring things into the oil, especially.
Okay.
I would say one before you put your kadai up to heat the oil, touch the level with your finger and see up to where it is. So when
Mm.
you're putting something in, you have to be
Mm.
careful that your hand does not touch the oil, especially when you're putting puri, or let's say you're putting vadiyams or papad or something like that. If you
Correct.
put it from very high, the oil will splash. If you put it
Correct.
very low, your finger can get burned.
Yes.
So make a little estimation of
Mm.
how far your hand should go.
Should be.
Try all this with when it is not even hot, no? When your oil is not yet hot. So
Yes.
approximately give yourself a little bit of an idea, an orientation about how far your hand can go into the kadai before it touches the surface. So papad is
Yes.
what I do is papad I hold with the tongs only. I
Mm.
hold the papad like that only, and I put it in and I bring it out.
Okay.
So with the tongs itself, take a chimta, hold the papad in one end of the papad with the chimta and put it into hot oil. The papad will immediately fluff up. Then pull it out just like that and drain the oil. That's all.
Oh,
Bhajis
yes.
and all are a little difficult because bhajis, if you put 2-3 bhajis, then it's okay. If you put too many bhajis, then it will become difficult to turn.
Mm.
And so that those things will come with a little bit of practice. But I'm saying what is necessary there is first your safety aspect. That
Mm.
quantity of oil being lesser is going to help you, Jyoti.
Okay. Okay.
Try with that. And there are
Yes.
other things also available now in the market, like to take things out of the oil. Like if you're frying vegetables, let's say,
Mhm.
a karela or something, some vegetables that you deep fry and you make also. You
Mm.
get little things in a steel market, in the steel shop that looks like a sieve, like a tea strainer, no? It looks like a tea strainer, but it is bigger. And it has stainless steel, what's it called, loops underneath.
Mm.
So
Mm.
that it's much bigger with a handle. So what happens is if you have to pick, it's like the fisherman's net, no? It's something like that, but in stainless steel. So you can easily take it out from there without actually having to worry about collecting.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Also, I would like to tell you one thing, because most of the visually impaired, what Uma said, no, they are feeling that we are visually impaired, we can't do anything. They are assuming that they can't do anything. But
Correct.
because of that, they will not try to get the orientation of anything, even vegetables. What is they cannot make out what is the vegetables, and some of the grocery
That is
things
why
also
we are
they will
here,
not
no?
know.
That is why all of us are here talking today.
Correct. So I would suggest all the visually impaired, don't assume like that. You try whatever it possible. So nothing will happen. When you are putting the efforts only, the result will come out. So
Absolutely.
that's what I wanted to say. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All the best, Jyoti. All the
Yes,
best.
thank you.
Thank you, Jyoti. Srinivas, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, good evening, ma'am.
Good
Good evening,
evening.
Uma. Are you getting me clear?
Oh,
Are you able
Sorry, I
to?
can't hear you. I can't
Wait,
hear
wait.
you very clearly.
Sorry. Now, okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
better, yes.
Yeah. Actually, first I just want to I am really glad to be a part of Voice of VIP, because the Voice of VIP only the organization which is providing a lot of webinars and a lot of very experienced fellows who can clearly solve our problems. It was really great, ma'am, listening to your talk.
Thank you so
I had I had never gone to cook directly, but I saw from afar what are they cooking to eat only. I just used to enjoy eating, but after listening to you, it was really awesome, ma'am. I listening to you, it was really awesome. That made me. I also can go to kitchen and I also can cook something which I
Absolutely.
like to eat.
Yes. You can. Definitely you can. And you must start doing it and let us know when you cook.
Sure, ma'am. Sure. And One question, ma'am. It's not a bigger one, but I just want to know. I never had gone to kitchen to cook something, but I just want to know, and I just want to clarify myself. It was so good listening to you cooking everything, vegetables, cooking rice, everything fine. But like you said, making bhaji like that. I have a question. Like when you are making puri and chapati, how do you manage that one? That one I want to know.
See, puri is a little difficult, but puri also it's a matter of practice. When you put the puri in the oil, the puri will and you press it, the puri puffs up. So once the puri, you have to. It's a matter of managing the equipment that you're using. So the spoon with which you make the puri, that is always going to be your contact with the puri. So it is you come to know when it is puffed up. Then you just turn it gently, you turn it over and then you take it out. It's a matter of practice completely. And chapatis also. Chapatis, like I said, it's just practice. What else can I say? Because chapatis also, it's understanding the heat, understanding the equipment that you're working with, the tawa on which you're cooking. Once you know what you're working with, rolling out the chapati is another very big problem for all of us. I get many questions saying, how can we make a round chapati? A round chapati is not always necessary. A chapati that cooks properly is necessary, because otherwise what will happen, your chapati will either become like a papad or it will become like a stone that you can hit someone on the head. What is the use of that? If it is round and beautiful and not edible, you cannot eat it. What is the use of the beautiful round chapati? Tell me. So it is necessary. I managed to do all that. My rotis are still, my chapatis are still not fully round at all, but it doesn't matter. To me, what is necessary is that the chapati has to be soft, and the chapati, when I cook on the stove, on the tawa, has to cook well and has to puff up nicely. So it has taken me many years of working with it and a lot of practice that makes these things happen. So that's it. The key is not to stop and to keep practicing.
Yeah, that's clear, ma'am. One more thing I just want to share, ma'am. This is not my question.
Tell me.
Like a lot of stereotypes will be there in the village people's mind, that they think that blind, he or she can't go to the kitchen. How if she burns her or his hands, fingers like that. Then I just I don't know how to tell them, but I just want everybody who are being visually impaired to just what to remove that stereotype in their mind. That I don't know what to do, how to do for that, but I just want to make everybody aware of the visually impaired, that they also can cook and they can also feed you nice and tasty.
Absolutely. So that you need to step into the kitchen yourself, and you need to, like Jyoti just said, that you have to give them the confidence that that is your responsibility. That's what I said. That is your responsibility. Their job is to be scared for you, to be worried for you, and to say that no, I'll bring for you. Why do you want to go? I'll come and I'll do it for you. It is your job to say, no, I know you can do for me, but I want to do for myself. And you come with me and I will tell you how to do it, and you help me. That you have to take them with you and make it a collective activity so that they also learn along with you.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Actually,
You're welcome.
really heartily, I'm telling, it was so good and so productive information, so productive webinar. And I'm anticipating a lot of webinars like this, which are productive for visually impaired from Voice of VIP. And really, I will be really thankful and be the part of every webinar that Voice of VIP is conducting. And I hope that Uma Shankar will provide the link of your YouTube channel to follow.
Yes. Uma, you have it, or do you need me to send it to you?
I'll definitely share that because I'm a big follower of Rasam Rahasya. So I'll definitely share that. Along with that, I'll also share a couple of.
Yeah, please do that. Please share it, because I think it will make a lot of difference. And I'm going to, my next series is going to begin shortly. So first series is on orientation, where I have talked everything that I have spoken today. There are 13 episodes in extreme detail. And my next series is going to start soon, in which I'm going to be doing methods of cooking.
Fingers crossed. So thank you so much, Srinivas. I must tell, like, Srinivas is the only one person I experiment my new dishes on. So we are hostel mate.
Good. That's a good thing. I think then you should make it a collective activity.
No, collective activity, then I think they ate. So, okay.
It's all right. It's
So
we all everyone needs a guinea pig. It's okay.
He's the great chef, ma'am. He's the great chef. He cooks very tasty.
Excellent. Excellent. That's good.
okay. Thanks for that. So, you'll not be experimented next time. Cool.
It's
we'll
always
just-
happy. It's always necessary to have friends to do this with. It makes it more interesting.
I know, right? Okay, so we'll just have one more question and then we'll wrap up the session. So, any last question, guys?
Yeah, hello.
Yes, hello.
So hi, this is Praveen. So just a request. I remember you saying that your YouTube videos are mostly in Hindi. Just a request is like videos. We need videos in English.
They're
so
only
that-
audio files. They're not.
Okay,
videos.
sorry,
We all
audios.
refer to them as videos, but they're just audio
Okay,
files.
okay. Just needed in English. That's the request.
See, they're English and Hindi mixed. They're more Hindi, unfortunately. This is a completely voluntary effort, and I've spent a lot of time and energy on it. And unfortunately, recreating that in English is not really something that I am seeing in the near future, unless I get someone who's sponsoring me for it. It's a lot of work.
Then I think it's easier for me to learn Hindi first. Then
You try listening to it. Have you heard it?
yeah. Once I've heard it, but since it was in Hindi, I just didn't proceed further. Like
Just try it and see. Try it
yeah,
and see.
sure.
I've tried to make it bilingual, but unfortunately, what happens is that because the audience that I was creating this for was primarily Hindi speaking, and they were the ones who wanted it most. That's what happened. I could have created it completely in English, but then that audience was not, completely. There are a lot of people from North, a lot of people from Gujarat, and various other such places who preferred Hindi, and in fact, little bits of information that I was giving in English also, they were finding it difficult. So unfortunately, that's the way it is. But if I find someone who's willing to sponsor this endeavor for me, I can create a whole series in English as well.
Okay,
So
got it.
I think we can all wait and wish.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much, Praveen. So I think we should run a campaign or a poll on whether do you want Payal's YouTube videos in Hindi or English.
Yes, please, Dave. Payal has no problem in doing YouTube videos. Please find sponsor for Payal's YouTube videos as well.
Yes.
And make sure that Payal has an earning out of it, and there will be a YouTube channel in English as well. Don't worry about it. But we need somebody sponsoring the entire endeavor. That's it.
Yes, I get it, and hopefully we'll definitely get someone to that.
Yeah, one can always wish. Absolutely. Who says put it out there in the universe, and who knows what will come back.
Yeah, true. So thank you so much. It's been a great time. I mean, the kind of experiences that you've shared and the kind of tips that you've given. So thank you so much for coming up and making our time productive and entertaining as well. Thank you so much, all of you. So what we'll also share a feedback form to the registered mail IDs and in our WhatsApp group as well. So kindly let us know your thoughts, your feedbacks that you couldn't put on the mic. So on the same mail, we'll also share blogs written by Payal, also the YouTube link of the channel that Payal is talking about. So thank you so much for joining us. It's been a great time. Thank you so much for cooperating.
Thanks so much, Uma. I'm happy that I've had an opportunity. Like I said, I've so far not done anything with any of my local friends and of people around. So I think it's a great pleasure. It's absolutely my pleasure to finally be here and do it for home rather than to do it for people from everywhere else. So
I sincerely don't know why this took this long, but
actually it's never, as they say. It's okay.
Yeah, so now that it's started, this is going to be a long journey. So fasten your seatbelts, hang on for a great ride.
Yeah, I'm available for any, if there are any specific things that you have a group that wants to talk about it, we can do those as well. That's
absolutely.
I also actually sometimes do. I have been doing it in the past. Of course, that's a paid service, but I do cook-alongs with people. I've helped people do their cooking from start to end, with whatever number of time, with a complete, like people thought we were ridiculous because we were sitting over mobile phones while I was instructing and the other person was cooking. So people thought we were completely crazy. But it was a very, very satisfying experience when people actually found the confidence, being handheld right through the entire process.
That's a great thing. So if you guys need any such help, you can, I'll also drop the email ID of.
It's available. It's the only thing is that because it's time consuming and everything, it's a paid service otherwise, but it's something that I do. But otherwise, if there's some sort of a discussion that you want and there's a big enough group for a particular discussion, let me know. I'll make myself available.
Definitely, Payal, definitely. So
yeah, okay.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you so much, everybody. This is Umashankar from Team Voice of VIP signing off.